What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today, we got a good one for you, talking some Josh Gordon. Really excited for this video. But before we do that, stat of the day. Time for some stat of the day. Yesterday's stat would have accepted 6 answers. 6 different answers. Sanaton Saraf got it first, and actually, not going to lie, not many people got that. I was a little bit surprised. It was what quarterback was hit the most amount of times, or the least amount of times while throwing the football. Would have accepted Mariota, Watson, Hoyer, Carr, McCown, or Fitzpatrick. Any of those would have been fine because they all had 1. Derek Carr was what Saraf said. He gets on the board. Today's stat of the day, a little bit of an unusual one, but we're going to test it out, see if anyone can get this one. Since we're talking about a wide receiver, figured I'd dig into the Pro Football Focus wide receiver stats. What wide receiver had the most penalties called against them? Most penalties called against them, what wide receiver? So, with that, let's hop into the video. Alright, we're going to dive into the question, is Josh Gordon worth first round pick? We're going to go over what he did last season, why he could dominate this season, why he could finish #1 overall. I'll ultimately go into my overall recommendation as to where you should draft him, or really if you should draft him at all, given his ADP. And I like these kind of videos, so let me know if you guys like them, or if there's any other topics you want me to dive into a little bit more than usual. I've already done the why you can draft Saquon Barkley over Antonio Brown, why Rodgers and Watson are both just terrible draft picks. So if there are any players that you want me to dive into deeper than we normally do, just let me know. They just have to be high leverage players. You know, I'm not going to do a video on someone who's just like universally considered a decent 6th round pick. I mean, that's no fun. I like to go into these videos to spark discussion and to challenge what some people just kind of blindly follow as the norm. So I really like these videos. Hope you guys like them. Let me know if you do, or if there's other players you want me to go over. Before we start this video, a quick reminder that the premium rankings are very nearly done. You can still get a premium membership right now. It's just a login to the website. And we just have to finish up the quarterbacks and wide receivers. We're very close to finishing them. Just got to finish those up, but you can still download them as we're finishing and sync them up to your computer. So right when we save them, they're saved to your computer. So check out the website if you haven't done that already. And let's get into this video. So let's start by breaking down Josh Gordon as an athlete. And there's a partial issue with doing this, is that he didn't participate in some of the combine drills we would look at to build this profile. We know he's got an 85th percentile height adjusted speed score. We know he's got an 80th percentile college breakout age. We know that he's got an 80th percentile arm length, so he doesn't have T-Rex arms. He can go up and get the ball. But we don't have SparkX. We don't have agility score. So we don't need that really, because if you watch him play, you just know he's a special athlete. So it's not really a big deal that we don't have these things, but it would be nice to have them if we were to compare him to other players. But if you've ever watched Josh Gordon play, you know he's a phenomenal athlete. So we can basically kind of cross off the things that we don't know because we've seen it. We should know. He's 27 years old, which is right at the age where wide receivers tend to have a dominant season. Typically working at age like 25 to 28 is when wide receivers are at their peak, when they post these dominant seasons. So we know he's a freak athlete. We know he's at his peak. What has he done? We know that when he returned last season, he had the 12th highest hog rate in the league, according to playerprofiler.com. And if you look back since 2013 at all of his game logs, where he's had over 100 yards or a touchdown, it's been half. Half of his games he's played since 2013. He's had over 100 yards or a touchdown in. That's a better percentage than Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Doug Baldwin, and a lot others. I was just really going for the people who were being drafted ahead of him, but a lot others. Basically, like everyone drafted behind him. There are very few players who can say in half of their games they have either 100 yards or a touchdown. This is the man who had 87 receptions for 1,646 yards and 9 touchdowns in 14 games. Remember, he only played 14 games in 2013. 87 for 1,646 and 9. During that season, he became the first player to post back-to-back 200-yard receiving games. Week 12, he had 14 for 237 and a touchdown. Then the next week, week 13, 10 for 261 and 2 touchdowns. That's the last time we saw him for a full season. He averaged 22.5 PPR points per game in that season. Antonio Brown has done that just 2014 and 2015. Calvin Johnson did that just once in his career in 2011. Now, you could say, oh, well, it was just a ton of targets. That's the only reason he got there. Well, okay, he had 11.3 targets per game in that season, which is a lot. Like, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of targets per game. But in 2014, Antonio Brown had the exact same amount, and Antonio Brown actually had 12 per game in 2015. Megatron had 204 targets in 2012, and that produced 21.4 PPR points per game. So it's not that he's doing nothing with these targets. He's getting just as many targets as some of these other elite guys, if not less, and he's just dominant with them. And those guys were playing with Big Ben and Stafford. Antonio Brown was putting up these numbers with Big Ben. Matthew Stafford was the quarterback for Megatron. Josh Gordon had that monster season with a revolving door of Jason Campbell, Brandon Weeden, and Brian Hoyer. Those are not good quarterbacks. And I can say without a shadow of doubt that both Tyrod Taylor and Baker Mayfield are significant upgrades over those three. And what he had to deal with last season. While we're on that, let's look at what he did last season. People bring up, the 42.9% catch rate. Okay, but it's kind of hard to catch the ball when the ball isn't even near you. He had DeShone Kizer as his quarterback. Okay, he led the league in yards per reception among wide receivers with at least 25 targets. Second in deep target percentage among wide receivers with at least 20 targets. The issue is only 5 of his 16 deep targets were even catchable. So 5 of them were humanly possible to catch. That's not his fault. It's DeShone Kizer being horrible. Caught all 5 for 177 yards and a touchdown. Among qualified quarterbacks, DeShone Kizer had the second lowest quarterback rating on deep passes. Only Eli Manning was worse. He also had the lowest adjusted accuracy percentage and the worst true passer rating. DeShone Kizer was real bad. And it wasn't just DeShone Kizer's fault. Like, don't get me wrong. DeShone Kizer wasn't good, but his coaching staff did not help him. That was the worst coaching staff I have seen in a long time. Like, I'm not sure I've ever seen in any professional sporting team, any organization, I've never seen worse coaching than the Cleveland Browns displayed. But maybe DeShone Kizer really is that bad. Tyrod Taylor had the 13th best quarterback rating on deep passes and 15th best adjusted accuracy percentage. Baker Mayfield was the top rated quarterback in college football last season by a wide margin, according to Pro Football Focus. He had the highest accuracy percentage on deep passing, 3rd highest NFL quarterback rating, and the highest adjusted completion percentage. It does not matter who the quarterback is. Now, who would you prefer it to be? If Baker's as good as we think, obviously you prefer it to be Baker. If you're an owner of any player on the Browns, you would prefer Baker, or you're in fantasy, right? You draft Josh Gordon, you draft Jarvis Landry, you draft anyone. Duke Johnson, even the running backs, because you want a good quarterback for your running back. Although, I will say Tyrod having legs helps a running back. But regardless, you would prefer Baker to be the quarterback if he's as good as we think. We'll have to see during preseason. I think Tyrod starts the season, but that's not a big knock. It is not a detriment to the team if Tyrod starts because he's a significant upgrade over what they had last season. So massive improvement at the quarterback position. If we look at air yards, because remember, air yards are one of the most sticky stats season to season because it takes all we can really project is targets or opportunity. Touchdowns are nearly unprojectable. They just happen randomly. You see Mike Evans go from 3 to 12 to 3. Like, you can't predict touchdowns. You just can't. What we can predict is volume. And air yards are better than just normal targets because, well, obviously, I'd rather have a lot of deep targets than a lot of short targets. So air yards takes that into account. It just makes sense. So we know that air yards season to season are very sticky. From when he returned in week 13 on, Josh Gordon was 3rd in the league in air yards. During that same stretch, he was 3rd in ADOT among wide receivers with at least 30 targets. He was also great after the catch. So a lot of times when someone they chuck the ball to him deep, they don't have great after the catch. A lot of after the catch might be on a screen pass. Well, Josh was 12th and yards after the catch per reception among wide receivers with at least 40 targets. So he has a high hog rate. These targets from this hog rate are coming deep downfield. Then after he catches that ball deep down the field, he's also elite after the catch. So this isn't someone who's getting a short target, turning it into 10. This isn't someone who's getting, deep targets and turning it into nothing after. This is a guy who's getting a ton of deep targets, then does something after. That's monstrous. So yes, there's an argument that I will get to after as to he's not going to see that many targets. But Josh Gordon's targets are different than Julian Edelman's targets. They're different than Golden Tate's targets. They're different than Jarvis Landry's targets. He's a different athlete. He's a physical freak that we need to adjust our thinking into just looking at targets. But if we're going to do that, we also need to consider he still does need the football thrown to him a certain amount of times in order to pay off. So I did a little study. Since 2010, I looked at the top 5 wide receivers in PPR scoring, how many targets they got. Because I wanted to see, is it even possible for someone where Josh Gordon's being projected for targets, which I'll get to, is it possible for someone like that to finish top 5? Because in order for you to be a first-round pick, you got to finish in the top 5, right? Just makes sense. 42.5% of top 5 wide receivers on PPR scoring had under 160 targets, 20% under 150, and just 15% under 140. But I say just 15%, that's still not bad. 15% of top 5 wide receivers since 2010 have had under 140 targets. That's completely manageable. So when I look at this, I say, okay, if Josh Gordon's going to get 150 targets, I would deem it likely he finishes top 5. And now, obviously, that's different year to year. We saw last season, wide receiver quarterback production had a dip in what we should have expected, and running backs saw an increase in what we should expect. So I see that reverting a little bit towards the mean. But every year is still different. You could have a year where you get, 19 fantasy points per game and finish number 1. But if it's a really good year for wide receiver, maybe that finishes number 6. But you didn't really do anything different. It was just the competition was different. So obviously injuries are going to play a role. Does AJ Green get hurt? Does Mike Evans get hurt? It's going to depend on what everyone else does. But if he gets 150 targets, then I would average him as a top 5 wide receiver. So if we simulated the season, a million times, and he gets 150 targets in all of those, I would say most of the time he's going to finish inside the top 5. So how many targets will he get? That's a good question. Look at who's on his team. They have Duke Johnson out of the backfield. They've got Jarvis Landry. They've got Njoku, and then they've got the scrapings for these other guys. I don't think at this point in his career, Corey Coleman hasn't showed us anything, so I don't think he's going to garner a ton of targets. But different sites that I've looked at have projected it differently. And now I'm not going to give away the exact projections of these sites because it's premium content, and I don't think I can do that. But I'll tell you that the ranges for targets among different sites for their premium projections range anywhere from 105 to 145. I haven't seen much above 145, but I'll also say that most sites don't like giving a projection above 160. We can feel pretty comfortable in saying someone's going to be over 160, probably multiple people. But sites like to be on the conservative end of these projections. So if a site projects you at 145, you should not think of it unrealistic to finish at 170, 175. That's kind of like their mean projection where there's a standard deviation away from that. And they don't want to be on the high end. That's like a 50th percent projection. So I personally think 105 is low, and I'm not going to say the site that gave him 105. I think 105 is low. I think it will probably be maybe not at 145 as an average projection. I'd probably put it more at 135. But would I be, just shocked if he had 160? Absolutely not. And if it wouldn't shock me that he's 160, and we know that 42.5% of top 5 wide receivers had under 160, if we're giving Josh Gordon, the guy that these targets are coming deep downfield, these targets come deep downfield, and then he does something after that. Guy that could be dominant in the red zone on a team that had the 9th most pass attempts last season. I mean, I got to think that if he gets 160, he's probably going to return first-round value. So it does come down a lot to exactly what your projection is. I'll say that Kenny Britt, Rashad Higgins, Ricardo Lewis, and Isaiah Crowell last season combined for 15 red zone targets. So Britt's not there, Crowell's not there, and we know that Landry took over that slot role. So do you guys even remember Higgins' weeks? That was crazy. But there's no way that these guys can have those 15 targets. Like, if we give these targets to Josh Gordon with what he did last season and under improved quarterback play, it's a genuine question. Is he worth a first-round pick? We've seen Jordy Nelson finish as quarterback 4 on 96 targets. So even if he goes 10 targets below the lowest projection, he could still finish top 5. We've seen Jordy Nelson do it. We've seen Des Bryant do the same on 138 targets. Josh Gordon finished as the number 2 wide receiver in that season with 159 targets. So he doesn't need like 200 targets. If he got 200 targets, oh my goodness. I mean, it won't happen, but could you even imagine the season he would have? So basically, no one's sure. No one can be positive. We're not in that coaching staff's mind how many targets Gordon is going to get. But even if everyone stays healthy, which, I mean, let's be honest, this is football. It's not even likely that everyone stays healthy. But if everyone stays healthy around him, you have to think that whoever the quarterback ends up being is going to look at Gordon a significant amount of times. Like I said, the Browns had the 9th most pass attempts last season. They're going to be playing behind a lot again this season. So I gotta think he gets enough opportunity to, if he's the player that we've seen over his career, he could get it done. So ultimate question, where would I draft Josh Gordon? So he's currently ranked as wide receiver 22 using Fantasy Pros consensus expert rankings. I have the highest ranking apparently of any expert, so I was kind of curious last week. I was like, I don't want to be below the field on Gordon. I was making this video and I was like, I don't want to be like on the lower end of these projections. I look on there and I'm ranked first for the ranking on Josh Gordon. So I have him as a mid-second round pick, the value he should create for your team. On Fantasy Football Calculator, he's being drafted as wide receiver 12 in around like the mid-third to late third round. So I think he's currently, under any site, just a phenomenal pick. I'll be curious to see how high that climbs once people start watching the Hard Knocks series, because remember, the Browns are part of that this season, which I think was a really good pick. I really want to watch that. But as of right now, if no one gets hurt, then no. You're not drafting him in the first round because remember value. You don't draft someone in the first round if you don't have to. So if you're sitting there in the second round and he's still there, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with him as a late second round pick. Just know your league. Know your players you're drafting with. Know his ADP on different sites and know where you think the latest is you can get him. I remember I made the video that you shouldn't be reaching in rounds 1 through 4. Then don't. If he's going in the late third round and you have a pick in the mid to early third round, then take him there. Don't take him in the first round. I'll be curious again to see how high his ADP does climb, because he could absolutely return first round value. There's not a doubt in my mind he could return first round value. But don't take him in the first round if he's going in the third round. Take him as late as possible. I don't like reaching for players in the first 4 rounds. So that is the end of this one. Let me know what you guys think about Josh Gordon, because I'm very curious to hear you guys' thoughts. And let me know if there's another player that you guys want me to break down, do a deep dive in, kind of like this one and kind of like the past ones that I've done. But that is the end of this video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, how about you hit that like button, subscribe if you are new. Thanks for watching.